Putting my camera down there, but it just doesn't look as good. So now I'm kind of looking up. There isn't a perfect spot. Here, you know what? Let me try moving some things around. Okay? How about that? I've got this arm here that I need to maybe try adjusting where it goes. It's actually quite a pain to use this thing. Maybe if I move my monitor over a little bit, and I open this up a little bit so that I can fit it on the back here. And then I can turn this sideways and here. Nope, loosen it even more. Good morning, everybody. Say hello in the chat. Let me know you're here. Or not. However you're feeling today, that is okay. If you feel like chatting, then chat away. If you've ever been a lurker and quiet, that's okay too. Work for me, work for me. There we go, come on. Nope. Alright, let's see. I don't want to pull everything apart, but that's the only way. Covered in cables here. Oh, so professional. You guys are impressed with my professionalism here. I think I turned off my monitor. There we go. Oh, come now. You came for narration. You didn't know that you would be getting. Oh, wrestling with my booth. There we go. Just another normal day in the life of a narrator for you guys. There we go. Goodness gracious. Okay, so I got that. Okay. Everything's falling apart. Oh my goodness. I love how people are actually hanging and watching this. Everything was so tight the first couple days, and then all of a sudden day 3 rolls around and I'm just falling all over myself here. This is great. It's hump day, everybody, middle of the week. How's your energy level right now? How are you feeling? Whoa, look at this. My whole screen is all messed up too. Alright, let's see if this works. Let's see. Pretty good, eh? How's that? Because then it's like, it's not so high. Like, I feel weird when it's so high. It's not at eye level. I'm like looking up and being like, hello, audience. I want to feel like I'm kind of on a stage. So I want to be slightly higher than the camera. What do you guys think of that? Does that look good? Okay, let me just wait for the light to set up properly. How's this? There we go. That looks like a pretty good arrangement. Yeah, and then I can easily look over. I think I need to get like a little picture of someone that I adore and put it There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you, Rich, for thank you, Rich, for informing me of that. Oh, this is so the what a start. What a start to the day. Eh? Okay. Yes, I was explaining the meaning of life. I hope you all take that to heart. All of those words are sacred, and the fact that I've shared the meaning of life with you today is very special. Really, the only thing that you can do in life is to grow a big beard like this. Yes, I was talking about my camera placement. Oh my goodness. What a mess. What a mess. But, you know, that's kind of how we roll at Sound Booth Theater. We're, we're a bit of a mess, and that's part of the charm. All right, what do we got? Can hear you, extremely quiet. Intro makes sense to me now. Halfway through book one. Ah, good. Okay, that's really great that you can connect with the intro more now. That's awesome. Probably explaining the meaning of life right now, and we can't hear it. Yes. Talking about camera placement. Yes. Good. All right. Well. Yes, 42. Douglas Adams, the classic. Beloved by many. But not me. Just kidding. I loved Hitchhiker's Guide when I was in high school. Got into it. That's when the movie came out, and it really tickled me. So long and thanks for all the fish. So sad that it must come to this. Da 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 da. Bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum. Bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum. So long and thanks for all the fish. If I had just one good fish, I wish it would be a tasty fish. I think I went into Christmas, Christmas, don't be late. Time for joy and time for hate. What? All right. Well, we got people popping in, stragglers. Say hello in the chat. Tell me how you're doing today. Yeah. How am I doing today? How am I doing? That's the thing. I often get caught up in how's everybody else doing, but how am I doing? Well, I woke up this morning and was feeling very groggy. Last night, I just, when you have dinner a little bit too early and then right before bed, you're like, shit, I'm hungry and I don't want to sleep on an empty stomach, I guess. So I'm going to eat something. Well, I decided to go to the convenience store that's just at the end of the block here. And I got some pizza pockets and some little chocolate cake things, like tasty cake type things that are absolutely atrocious for your health and body. And I ate that. I ate that and the pizza pockets, and it was great at the moment, but now today my energy is just like I'm dragging butt, as my dad would say. Not dragon butt, as in the butt of a flaming monster, but dragging butt. He lets go of that ending G, so it's dragon butt. Dragon butt. He has a bunch of sayings like that. Richie says, you're packing up the last little bit of the house because Friday's moving day. Hey, congratulations. A simultaneously exciting and daunting time, moving day. At least if you're me. I love moving. I love fresh starts. I love, getting things set up in a way that there's just new energy and new space. And then at the same time, moving all your crap, especially if you like books like I do. Yeah, that can be a pain. I got rid of so many books when we moved into this small space. And I miss them. I miss having books. So yeah, this next place, Nikki and I are going to be moving to a place in just a couple months as well. So we'll be right there with you. Oh yeah, Richie says 300 plus books are packed, and that was the worst part. Yep, yeah. I'm not surprised you have that many books, Richie. That's awesome though. Good workout. Good. What would that be? Like core workout, like lifting those boxes. I guess biceps, arms, maybe a little bit of chest as you're trying to hold it together. All right. Well, we're at the 10-minute mark. I'm going to go ahead and play the intro one more time, and then when I get back, we'll be ready to go. I'm a little congested today. Can you guys hear that? Let's see. Yeah, streaming to Facebook as well right now, Rallo90. I'm using a program called StreamYard that sends everything to different places. So I'm just streaming to Facebook, my Facebook page, and then the YouTube as well. And actually, if you're watching this, I would love it if you went over to my Facebook page, Justin Thomas James. I think that's all it is. I think it's just Justin Thomas James. There's like a pixel art on the front, and yeah, follow me there. Sometimes I post to just Facebook, right? If I've got, new releases, or if I've got, new projects that I'm working on, usually with Sound Booth. That's where I put most of my Sound Booth stuff, if not in Sound Booth Theater Live group. But yeah, any follows are welcome. Love connecting with people that like listening to my stuff. God knows that Nikki doesn't. So one of the I guess difficult things about dating a narrator, I would say, is if you don't like the genre that they narrate in, then you're like, you shouldn't be expected to listen to it. She's not a big fan of lit RPG, but I did tell her that we might be getting into romantasy, and then she's perked up on that. But 10 plus hours is a long time to listen to something that someone that you love does. So I totally get it. If you used Facebook, you would. Oh, that's okay. No, definitely no apology necessary. I actually have conflicted feelings about using Facebook because it's helpful for work, obviously, and spreading the word of the audiobooks that I produce, but also it's really a time sink. Everything social media related. TikTok, I don't even bother with it. I've tried, and I just it's just too much. Even Instagram, I feel like just an old man. I'm just like, nope, give me my Facebook, and that's all I need. That's all I need to be happy. But even then. Sin from Sin's Corner is here. Hello, Sin. If anybody here likes movie reviews and wants good, honest opinions about movies, Sin is the best. She's very true to herself. She'll share her taste. Her taste. She knows her taste, and she's not afraid to share it. And that's what makes that channel great. There's no pandering. There's no being like, oh well, I want I just like this director. She'll be honest about well, you normally really like this director, but this time he really fucked it up. Pardon my French. Fuck means seal in French, so he treated it like a seal. Oh! What the heck? I'm selling a house in Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah, yesterday I believe you mentioned you recently visited there. Yeah, no way. That's amazing, Ross. What a small freaking world. Yeah, I was in Asheville with Nikki, who's studying at the Ayurvedic Institute there. And we were there in September, and we were there during, in January for a few weeks. Well, I was there for a week, and Nikki was there for 3. It's a beautiful, beautiful town. We were actually there during the hurricane in September. And that was absolutely wild. Was your house affected, Ross? Or impacted, rather? Gosh, never heard of this place before in my life, before a year and a half ago. And now, or not even a year and a half, less than a year ago, I barely heard of it. And now, like, I've been there 2 times. I've experienced a hurricane there, and but then also like the people that we're going to be renting from in the next couple months, they like one of them like was like basically raised in Asheville. One of them was, and then of course, yeah, you saying that you've got a house in Asheville. That's crazy. Sin says we need to convince Justin to become an American. Maybe he'll want to buy that house. Oof. Yeah, keep working. Keep working on me there. I'm like, I don't know. We're all just going to be one country sooner or later. God. Come on down south, Justin. We have cookies. Keto cookies. Get into my van, Justin. That's the only way you're going to get the cookies. Gosh darn it. All right, let us jump ahead to there we go. Chapter 10. So I've decided to do one more chapter in this set. Gosh darn it, Justin, move to the States. Get out of Canada. What are you doing up there? Oh, Lord. Oh, Mama Bear. Love you so much. All right. Ah. Trivial damage, fortunately. Just like trees falling around it and some roof stuff. You're going to get back to Blood Mercs. We'll keep this playing in the background. All right. Hope it's not too distracting. My mouth is really dry. 1 second. I'll be right back, you guys. I will be right back. All right. So I ended up taking an extra 10 minutes or so to chat with you guys because I just love talking to you guys. Rallo says, since he's Canadian, do you think he's going to get maple syrup to drink, super stupor style? Yes, that's exactly what I was swishing in my mouth. I'm curious though, oil? Never heard of doing that. It is a common voice actor trick to stay lubricated, or is it just vegetable or olive oil? So this was actually, I think, like a minty coconut oil, and a this is not a narrator voice actor trick, but my fiance Nikki is studying Ayurveda and learning about the body, learning about kind of these Eastern treatment methods, or Indian specifically, treatment methods for the body, and things that can help with dryness or like stickiness in the body, but also like in the mouth, and kind of a principle. Well, I can't really get into the principles personally because this is not my field at all, but it's kind of the idea, like, if you feel too cold, then you want to heat yourself up. If you feel too hot, you have to, give yourself some cold. You kind of balance in that way. And so when my mouth is sticky, kind of very, very like basic, like Ayurvedic, I guess, principles would be, you want to counter that stickiness with something else. And oil is, I think, the opposite of stickiness, that like goopy stickiness. That's what creates the mouth noises. But oil, when you oil your mouth, that lubricates everything. And now it's really not as bad as it was before. Before it was really like that, like really kind of gross. But now it's lubricated. So that's kind of, the oil has cut the stickiness. Now, another interesting thing that I haven't experimented with too much, but I've done it a couple times, and it helps with my endurance a lot, is when I get like a dry throat. Like, that's what happens a lot with narration, is because you're giving the air, giving your throat access to air, or you're exposing your throat to air so much. Your vocal box, your vocal cords, like everything in there is getting aired out. It's drying out. And so it's important to stay lubricated, and water will help you stay lubricated. But water can also be very drying at the same time, oddly enough. So really what you need to get down there is oil. But the way to do that isn't to just, chug back some oil or even gargle with oil. Gargling can help a little bit, I think. But it's actually to do something called nasya, which is where you drop some oil into your nostrils, and then you inhale it a bit. This is just my basic understanding. This isn't professional advice or anything like that. But what happens is then the oil goes back into your sinuses, and then down into your throat, but avoids the like, if you were just to swallow it, that would go down the wrong tube, right? It wouldn't oil up your vocal cords, but because it's accessing through your nasal passage, then it is lubricating the vocal cords. So yeah, but there's like a very particular way to do it, and I can't do it by myself. I just don't have the aim or dexterity to get it in there right, so I need Nikki's help for that. Oh, Nikki approves. She was listening to my explanation. Was it okay?
Great.
Yeah?
That was great, yeah.
Okay, awesome. She's taught me a lot, so.
That was awesome.
All right.
Spreading the good word.
Spreading the good word. Yes, Ayurveda. Check it out. Check it out. Yes, what is basically an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of, what's the saying? You guys finish it for me. I'm going to play this intro one more time, and then I'm going to get started. Here we go. Let me change this around quickly. There we go.
All right. Getting into the voice of Harold, making sure that I'm shooting the air up into the very top of my soft palate, and that's where Harold's voice lives. And he also has no lips, so he's very enunciating widely here, and I'm not going to do it like a skeleton, because then he's going to sound like this, and then there's no actual enunciation properly. But yes, the teeth need to be very exposed, and we need to hear the resonance off the teeth as well. All right, here we go. Getting into my position. Gonna actually loosen my belt here. Pardon me. There we go. Now my diaphragm can move more fully. And here we go. Chapter 10. Suitable Suite. The cultivators of the Ashen Forest sect were kind enough to provide me with a small suite within the sect's pavilion. It was an apartment with 3 bedrooms and a pair of washrooms, as well as a small kitchen space, a room for closed-door cultivation, and access to a roof garden, where some benches waited atop some flat stones with raked ash between them. It was telling that they didn't include a library in their suite. Or maybe I had just set my expectations too high. Yes, this will do, I told Cinder. She bowed her head my way. Good. I'm glad you found the rooms to your liking. These are usually reserved for visiting elders of the other sects, though I think we can count on one hand the number of times that has happened. I suppose that the area is hardly a tourist attraction. It isn't, Cinder confirmed. She glanced back toward the doorway, where Char was resting his back against the wall, arms crossed over his chest and eyes half-lidded in boredom. We'll be leaving at first light in the morning. I hope that's enough time for you to rest and recuperate. It's not as if I need the sleep, but I do appreciate the time. It'll let me catch up on some of my reading. It's not as if I need the sleep, but I do appreciate the time. It'll let me catch up on some of my reading. Cinder nodded and then hesitated for a moment before slipping away. Cinder nodded and then hesitated for a moment before slipping away. Char followed her out of the suite, sliding the door closed behind him. I suspected that he was there as a sort of chaperone, which was an inherently silly thing to have, all things considered. My libido was about as alive as the rest of me. My libido was about as alive as the rest of me. I took a moment to wander through the suite once more, this time with an eye socket towards a good reading spot. There weren't many, surprisingly. Whoever had designed this suite had done so with an eye towards luxurious austerity. That is, the space was tastefully empty of anything, with large rooms that only held as much furniture as they needed, and not an end table more. A proper reading nook, in my humble and well-studied, and therefore correct, opinion, was a space where the reader would feel comfortably coddled. A small, warm space, free of distractions, with good lighting and a minimum of distracting sounds. Outdoor spaces were fine for this, though it was usually best if the outdoors was a window away. Outdoor spaces were fine for this, though it was usually best if the outdoors was a window away, as opposed to where the reader was directly located. Personally, I enjoyed a good skylight, or a full glass wall overlooking something calm, a shoreline, perhaps. A shoreline, perhaps an uninhabited forest. At times a graveyard. At times a graveyard for the classic necromantic aesthetic. Ideally, a reading nook should have at least one large seat with cushioned arms, several blankets, a few pillows soft enough to squeeze against one's side, and perhaps a footrest. And perhaps a footrest. And perhaps a footrest. One moment, it's very quiet today. And perhaps a footrest. Why are you so quiet? Ah, that's why. There we go. And perhaps a footrest. And perhaps a footrest. And perhaps a footrest. Leather seats were right out. Leather seats were right out. The material clung to skin in a distasteful way, and even though I had no skin in that game, and even though I had no skin in that game, I still disliked it on principle. I still disliked it on principle. A fireplace was nice, but not necessary. A butler or maid on standby was nicer still. Perhaps one ready to remind the reader of the time so that they might ignore it. Perhaps one ready to remind the reader of the time so that they might ignore it and any duties they had in order to continue reading. Perhaps one ready to remind the reader of the time so that they might ignore it and any duties they had. Perhaps one ready to remind the reader of the time so that they might ignore it and any duties they had. Perhaps one ready to remind the reader of the time so that they might ignore it and any duties they had in order to continue reading. The suite was certainly not up to spec, but it was a good effort, given the short time they had to prepare it. I found a good enough seat, some pillows from the bedrooms, and a small box that I could use as a footrest. These were all levitated to a room with a window. Overlooking Shitaki's city's ashen rooftops. I settled myself down, then reached into a pocket for a book to read. Long ago, I had discovered myself afflicted by a sickness called reader's hesitation. It was an illness that arose when one had many choices of what to read, but wasn't in a mood for any of them. Unfortunately, no matter the genre, style, or themes I was in the mood for, I would always eventually reach the end of written matters in that niche. I would always eventually reach the end of written matters in that niche. It was extremely frustrating to want more of something that I had already caught up on. I'd even gone so far as to resurrect favorite authors so they might continue their works, and I was the patron of many an artist. Eventually, however, I'd discovered a simple solution. A catalogue of books I'd enjoyed the reading of, some more than others. Essentially, it was a list of some several thousand books that I'd rated between satisfactory and excellent. These were placed within a pocket dimension which would create a copy of a random book from the catalogue when reached into. Of course, by necessity, I had read every book in the catalogue, but that's where the clever part came in. Of course, by necessity, I had read every book in the catalogue, but that's where the clever part came into play. On reaching into the pocket dimension, a complex magical trigger was pulled, one which would give the reacher a fresh book to read, and which would simultaneously erase their memories of that very same book. I sat back into the seat, a new book in hand. It was blue, with a pair of lagomorph ears on the cover. What is a lagomorph? Anybody know? Oh, lagomorph. Oh, that's cute. It was blue with a... It was blue. It was blue. It was blue. It was blue. It was blue with a pair of lagomorph ears on the cover. Oh, this seems interesting, I commented to myself. I had no recollection of this one, as intended. I commented to myself. I had no recollection of this one, as intended. I had no recollection of this one, as intended. I opened the book, finding a small review written on a loose leaf just behind the cover. It was penned in my own hand, and, of course, spoiler-free. Nodding to myself, I opened the door and idly started reading. This was a distraction. There were certainly other things I could be doing at the moment, even other books that I could be reading. A refresher on certain topics wouldn't go amiss, and perhaps I should have been studying the work that went into the creation of my phylacteries. After all, I was on a mission to recuperate one of them at the very moment. But I didn't feel like doing that. Once I'd been the sort of person that put work. Once I'd been the sort of person that put work first. Studying and improving myself was priority. Studying and improving myself was my priority in all things. Amusement was only found as long as that amusement came from my work. Amusement was only found as long as that amusement came from my work, and I did truly enjoy the scientific process. Discovering something new or proving myself wrong was always a great way to spend the day. However, as the realities of immortality began to sink in, I realized that while I had forever to do what I wanted, the only thing standing in my way was myself. I wouldn't consider myself a lazy bag of bones, but some divertisement from time to time isn't that great a sin. I wouldn't consider myself a lazy bag of bones, but some divertisement from time to time isn't that great a sin. I was about 6 chapters in when the door to the suite opened. Fortunately, I recognized the soft, padded steps as Alex, and the louder, clunkier steps followed Alex. Fortunately, I recognized the soft, padded steps as Alex. Fortunately, I recognized the soft, padded steps as Alex, and the louder, clunkier steps following Alex as Rem. It seemed as if Mem wasn't with them. I imagined that she was probably lost. Alex came to stand nearby. Then they waited.
"Why aren't you saying anything, stupid?"
Rem started. "Shh," Alex said.
"What? What did you—"
"Shh." "Shh," Alex repeated. Alex repeated a little more insistently. "A good butler knows to wait until their master has reached the end of a chapter before interrupting. It's only polite. A good butler knows to wait until their master has reached the end of a chapter before interrupting. It's only polite." Rem sniffed. But other than some low grumbling, didn't say anything else. Fortunately for the mantis's patience, I was a quick reader, and these chapters weren't overly long. I carefully dog-eared the corner of the page I was on, then closed the book. Yes? I asked. I noticed that Alex and Rem were both carrying a mantis person. They were covered in ribbons. One significantly more artfully than the other, and they both seemed to be knocked out at the moment. "Hello, Daddy," Alex said. "We were mugged." "Were you mugged by these two?" I asked.
Only her.
Rem said, while pointing to the mantis she was carrying.
That one's Rob.
I sighed and shook my head. Rem, I have a question for you. Who named you?" The mantis blinked.
My mother?
She said, though she didn't sound entirely certain. "And what age? And at what age did she name you?"
Young.
Interesting. I'm wondering if your siblings' names are a case of nominative determinism or if it's all just coincidence. Depending on which, it may or may not be a case of fantastic wordplay, which would oblige me to respect your mother at least a little. Depending on which, it may or may not be a case of fantastic wordplay, which would oblige me to respect your mother at least a little. Depending on which, it may or may not be a case of fantastic wordplay, which would oblige me to respect your mother at least a little. Rem glanced at Alex, then back at me.
Can you eat that?
"Never mind," I said. I'd question Rem's mother. Never mind. Never mind, I said. I'd question Rem's mother myself when the time came. In any case, what do you intend to do with these two?" "Does Father want the bodies?" Alex said. "I can kill them so it doesn't show." "I don't have a particular need for them, no." Alex hummed. More butlers?" Alex hummed. More butlers?
No!
Rem said.
You haven't finished training me yet.
That's true, Alex replied. Well, I don't know what to do then. Maybe we can give them to the sect. I think they generally dislike the Mantis people. I suppose it's an idea, I replied. Let me know what you choose to do. Oh, and we're leaving at first light in the morning. You might want to track down Mem between now and then. I returned to my reading, curious as to what past me meant by that review I'd left myself. I returned to my reading, curious as to what past me meant by that review I had left myself. There we go. End of chapter 10. There we go. That is the end of set 1. So file, save live set. Doing good. How's everybody here doing?
All right. Boom, boom, boom. Pretty quiet today. That's okay. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. All right, let's keep it going. Yeah, not sure if, I'm wondering if the chat has frozen like it did yesterday. That's okay, though. Yeah, yesterday I had re-updated or something, and then I was... Okay, this is prologue to C10, and then we need C11. Didn't really know characters and their names in the previous streams. Don't recall hearing Limpet. Hope she didn't die. No. She didn't die. You're good. That's not really spoilers. You'll hear of her. Oh, actually, in this chapter, you're gonna hear from her. All right, so save live set as. This is 02, actually. Save. And then I can delete all of this. I think actually this chapter I can skip. There we go. Rename 10. Dory. Yeah, this is all Dory. Good, okay, well, that's an easy one. I get to skip that.
Chapter 12. Dusty Dimension. I finished the 76th book in the series I'd started the night before, just as the sun rose over the walls of the city. I tucked the book away, then stood while placing bony hands on my hips to stretch out my spine. Once, when I had flesh over my bones, I had been very careful about my posture, sitting straight and keeping my back in good working order. Unsurprisingly, undeath had put an end to my back pain for me, and from then on I had to make a conscious... And from then on, I'd had to put a... Unsurprisingly, undeath had put an end to back pain for me. And from then on, I had to make a conscious effort not to allow myself to slouch. Papa is ready for the day? Papa is ready for the day? Papa is ready for the day? Alex asked as they stepped up. Alex had been standing at attention a few paces away from my reading chair all night, as a maid should. Alex had been standing at attention a few paces away from my reading chair all night, as a maid should. Do you want me to draw a bath? Prepare a change of clothes? Yes, I think that would be acceptable, I said. Alex left with a bob of the head, disappearing deeper into the suite. In the meantime, I reached into an inner pocket and pulled out a folded bundle of clothes, carefully wrapped in wax paper and tied with a neat bow. It was a little dusty, but the packet had been waiting in a pocket dimension for several millennia, and so that was only to be expected. I left it on. It was a little dusty, but the packet had been waiting in my pocket. It was a little dusty, but the packet had been waiting in a pocket dimension for several millennia, so that was only to be expected. I left it on my seat, trusting Alex to find it. It was a spare set of clothes. I had been wearing the same ones for... Well, since I went to sleep, actually. The suit wasn't dirty, not with Alex always hovering around, but it was starting to wear a little. Besides, perhaps I was due for a change of colors? With the bath drawn up in no time at all, I slipped into the washroom and unclothed myself, then sank into the steaming hot water. It felt nice to warm up my old bones a little. I found a scrubber with rough bristles on the end, and used it to rub out the grime and dust caught between my joints. Prestidigitation was good for a quick bit of spot cleaning, and cleaning magic on its own wasn't to be underestimated. But there was something cathartic about a good scrub. I exited the bath a short time later, after removing my skull and giving it a vigorous shake under the soapy water. I made sure to tap out any water caught within. Mortals often complained about having water in their ears after a swim, but that was nothing compared to having a skull filled with water. Alex approached with a nice fluffy and preheated towel and patted me down. Then it was time to get changed. It's nice to have a little change. It's nice to have a little change, I said as I did up my bow tie in front of a tall mirror. It suits you very well, Papa, Alex said with a hint of pride. I paused. Suits me? Suits me? Well done, Alex. Thank you, Alex said with a curtsy that I caught in a mirror. Suits me? Well done, Alex. Thank you, Alex said with a curtsy that I caught in the mirror. The new suit was a pale brown, made of tweed over a dark beige shirt, all paired with a maroon bow tie. It was a sharp contrast from my previous suit, which was brown tweed over a beige shirt with a red bow tie. Yes, I like the contrast of the maroon with the paler suit. Yes. Yes, I like the contrast of the maroon with the paler suit, I said as I twisted my neck left and right. In any case, are we ready to go? Alex nodded. Yes, Snazzy Daddy. That might be too far. We're a pun family, not a rhyme, Dad. We're a pun family, not a rhyme family. Oh, sorry. It's all good, I said forgivingly. It was an understandable mistake to make. We all erred a little in imperfection. Impunfection? No, best keep that one to myself. It was a little too forced. So, any news for the day? I asked. The sun was fully up now, though it was still the early hours. The pavilion and the city beyond were just coming awake. I haven't had time to see about the daily news. I haven't had time to see about the daily news, Alex said. But I can confirm that Mem is back. She's in the pavilion jail cells below, along with Rob and Mug. Rem was tasked with cleaning the carriage before her bedtime. I don't think they'll have finished before now. That's fine. The practice won't hurt, and in any case, I suspect that we'll be traveling with the sect today. Finished before now. That's fine. The practice won't hurt. And in any case, I suspect that we'll be traveling with the sect today. Alex nodded along as I led us both out of the suite I was given, and into the main parts of the pavilion. That's where I was intercepted by a bright-eyed Cinder. The night's rest at home seemed to have The night's rest at home seemed to have treated her well, and she'd taken the opportunity to freshen up and change into a cleaner dress herself. "Hello, Harold," she said. "Hello," I replied. "And good morning. Are we prepared to head out?" "We are. Elder Frost and I will be leading you to the edge of the Ashen Lake by the main sect holdings. I hope that keeping a cultivator's pace for the next part of the voyage is acceptable to you." "Acceptable to you?" "Certainly, though I might want to take some time to grab samples from the local flora and fauna as we move." "Certainly, though I might want to take some time to grab samples of the local Certainly, though I might want to take some time to grab samples from the local flora and fauna as we move." "Certainly. That can be done. I think we all prefer to travel while taking small breaks along the way. Besides, part of the sect's duties lie in exterminating any threats close to Shiitake City. We'd only be doing our work." "Well said." Well said. "Ah, yes, I must inquire about Mem." "Well said. Ah, yes, I must inquire about Mem." "Mem?" "Mem? Is she well?" "I imagine so. She's currently in your prison. Or so. I imagine so. She's currently in your prison, or so Alex informs me." "Ah," Cinder said with a slow nod. "That's plausible. I'll have her retrieved. And the other mantises?" "Oh, I don't care about them, though I wonder what the usual procedure would be here." "Oh, I don't care about them, though I wonder what the usual procedure would be here." "Oh, I don't care about them, though I wonder what the usual procedure would be here." "Oh, I don't care about them, though I wonder what the... Oh, I don't care about them, though I wonder what the usual procedure would be here." "They are generally considered enemies of the sect, which we can do nothing about. A threat and a pest, but one given the blessing of the Jade Throne on account of their affiliation with their godly mother. We suffer a number of losses whenever one strays into the city." "I can imagine. Alex didn't paint the two they ran into last night as model citizens." "Rob and Mug are surprisingly not the worst. They're thieves and occasionally murderers, but that's the extent of their crimes. They rarely fight any cultivators, and most citizens are used to surrendering some portion of their goods to the two. They'll even avoid mugging the same person twice. Civilians are advised to carry 2 pouches for their gold, one with lesser denomination coins. It also helps against the more normal type of pickpocket." "I see. I see, I replied. "Well, do as you please." "Well, do with them as you please. It's not skin off my nose, which has none to begin with." "Which has none to begin with." "Which has none to begin with." Hey, Rollo is at work, so occasionally have to stop listening for a few minutes. What do you do for work, Rollo? Cinder chuckled along with me. Cinder chuckled. Cinder chuckled along with me. Cinder chuckled along with me. Cinder chuckled along with me before she paused. Cinder chuckled along with me. Cinder chuckled along with me. Cinder chuckled. Cinder chuckled along with me before she paused to confer with a member of the pavilion staff who was sent scurrying off to fetch Mem. We gathered outside, where Cinder and I found seats in a small garden behind the main building of the pavilion. Alex darted back within to fetch what we needed for the journey. and to fill and awaken Rem. I suspected that Mem would be getting an involuntary bath as well, if she was in any state other than perfectly clean. "So, the lake today?" I asked. "It's just far enough that we'll be arriving there within the day," Cinder said. "After that, we can cross the lake, possibly overnight if the word traveled ahead rapidly enough." "And beyond that, what's the plan?" 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 "There are mountains to cross beyond that. The Mantis Queen's lair is within those, along with the southern end of the mountain ridge. If we make it to the foot of the mountains by tomorrow morning, then we can start to scale them. The Ashen Forest sect has long discovered ways into the mountain's cavern system, as well as... Are you familiar with dwarves?" "Stout little fellows, fond of metalwork and tools?" "Yes." "Stout little fellows, fond of metalwork and tools?" "Yes." "Yes." "There are several clans living beneath the mountains and more to the west, where they have a fortress city which is frequently besieged by the Mantis Queen. We have a tentative alliance with some of these dwarves." "I see. You wouldn't be the first cultivators to make friends with them." "I see. You wouldn't be the first cultivators to make friends with them," I said. She blinked. "We wouldn't?" "I met an architect near the ruins of Silvershire who had some dwarven friends as well. Ruelan, I believe." Cinder sat up. "Wait, Ruelan from the Abyssal Depths sect? You know her?" I asked. We've been rivals for almost my entire life," Cinder said. "We both swore to kill each other multiple times." Ah, so you do know her. Small world, I suppose." "You must tell me how you met, so that she doesn't get ahead of me in some other way." Certainly. It all started as I was exploring an old haunt of mine. The city of Silvershire, which, of course, all ruins now. It all started as I was exploring an old haunt of mine, the city of Silvershire. It all started as I was exploring an old haunt of mine, the city of Silvershire, which, of course, are all ruins now. I was also training the Limpet through the early stages of magic use. There we go, end of that chapter. All right, IT security, right on. IT security, so that's like making sure that your company staff know about like phishing scams and not clicking on links that they don't trust and all that stuff. Cleaning up computers or systems if they're compromised, that sort of thing. All right. Yeah, she's calling herself Limpet. She's like a general now. Oh, sorry, spoilers. Oh, you might have heard me say General Limpet at some point. All right. Let's keep it going. Chapter 13. Chapter 13. Chapter 13. Troublesome Time. By the time I was done relating my story to the very attentive Cinder, Alex had returned, along with Mem and Rem. Mem seemed very pleased and was swaying her head from side to side in an amused fashion. Rem did not seem very pleased and looked fit to disembowel her sister for what seemed like the crime of being in a good mood. "Are we ready to head out?" I asked. Yes, Cinder said as she jumped to her feet. "I'll inform the elder that we're to leave. We'll be carrying some light supplies with us. Is there anything in particular you need, Alex?" The first half of that question was aimed at me, but she quickly turned it towards Alex, who was the appropriate person to ask after all. Alex hummed. I think that I have enough supplies in my bag for a few days on the road. I think that I have enough supplies in my bag for a few days on the road. A resupply mission yesterday wasn't as successful as I would have liked, but I did pick up some basics. We'll have plenty to eat and changes of clothes. We'll have plenty to eat and changes of clothes as well as toiletries. Rem hissed at the last. Rem hissed at the last. Rem hissed at the last. Do you have an issue with toiletries? I asked. Rem raised her arms a little, what I interpreted. Rem raised her arms a little, what I interpreted as mild aggression from her. What would be mild dislike for a more humanoid person?
I hate the bathroom, she said. It's the worst place to clean. There's too many rules. Then the stupid maid makes me clean myself there. It's gross.
Rem has a hard time in the bathroom, Alex said. Then the maid ducked under a swing of Rem's scythe.
Rem doesn't have a hard time. It's stupid in there.
You keep destroying bathroom tissue. You keep destroying the bathroom tissue and drinking the shampoo. You keep destroying the bathroom tissue and drinking the shampoo, Alex pointed out rather calmly. Alex pointed out rather calmly. It seems like bathroom matters are a roll-licking good time for you, I said with a skeletal grin. Rem stared.
What?
I'm merely saying that you're not as sophisticated as you could be. Rem glanced between me and Alex.
Is the dead one broken?
He's making jokes, Mem said. Mem loves jokes. She heard one that was very nice recently. Oh? I asked. Mem bobbed her head. Why did the butcher slay 2 pigs and a goat when the cultivator came to town? I had to admit I didn't know that one. I don't know. Why? I asked. Mem blinked her many eyes, then shrugged her shoulders. Mem doesn't know. She didn't hear the end of the joke because people started screaming at her. But they did laugh after, so it must have been funny. Ah, I see. Cinder cleared her throat. Cinder cleared her throat. Hey, false positron, welcome back. Good to have you. Cinder cleared her throat. If we're all quite ready, I think we can find Elder Frost at the front of the pavilion. I acquiesced, even though I was still in the mood for a bit more wordplay, but there was a time and a place for such things, not to mention a people. Of all the reactions to proper wordplay, by far the worst was the onkerpren. I acquiesced, even though I was still in the mood for a bit more wordplay, but there was a time and a place for such things, not to mention a people. Of all the reactions to proper wordplay, by far the worst was the uncomprehending what of someone too foolish to understand. We found Elder Frost at the front, as promised. She had a small bag on her hip, and her arms folded into the sleeves of her dress as she spoke in hushed words with soot. She had a small bag on her hip, and her arms folded into the sleeves of her dress as she spoke in hushed words with soot. Char was nearby as well, looking as though he was very recently chastised. The elder finished speaking with Soot, who nodded, then rolled back and away. The elder finished speaking with Soot, who nodded, then rolled back and away. Soot soon bowed our way before Char. Soot soon bowed our way before Char grabbed the back of his chair and started pushing him in. Soot soon bowed our way before Char grabbed the back of his chair and started pushing him in. Soot soon bowed our way before Char grabbed the back of his chair and started pushing him. "Hello, Elder Frost," I said. "Hello, Elder Frost."
"Harold," she replied. "Cinder, I was just giving Soot some final instructions. A team for the sect will be arriving soon to watch over the city in my absence."
"Is it just Mr. Soot and Mr. Char right now?" "Is it just Mr. Soot and Mr. Char right now?" "Is it just Mr. Soot and Mr. Char right now?" Alex asked. Elder Frost stared for a moment before replying.
"For the moment, more sect members are coming down. When we succeed in defeating the Mantis Queen, they'll be charged with cleaning the city of her spawn, especially the more troublesome ones."
"All of my sisters are troublesome,"
Rem grumbled.
"She's not wrong," Elder Frost agreed. "Though there are degrees to such things. Mem here is accused of kidnapping people's pets and some breaking and entering and trespassing, as well as rooting through people's trash, but never any terrible crimes, for example."
Mem didn't kidnap them," Mem said. "She just stayed with them when they're all alone." "I see," I said. "It's comforting to see that justice is being applied. It's comforting to see that justice is being applied fairly. Shall we be off, then?" The elder nodded graciously.
Follow me, please, she replied before she took off. She replied before she took off. She replied before she took off. She set a very steady pace with the assistance of her cane, which we all fell in behind. I didn't mind having her in the lead. The woman clearly knew her way around this city better than I. The woman clearly knew her way around this city better than I did, and it allowed me some time to glance around and take it all in. Shiitake City seemed like a place that one could fully immerse themselves in for a mortal lifetime without discovering everything there was to learn about it. It was layered, with space within the walls clearly at a premium, so the... It was layered, with space between the walls clearly at a premium, so the locals built up. We actually crossed some newer constructions as we headed north. A few buildings looked like they were being dismantled next to others which were brand new. A renovation? The newer buildings had an extra 2 floors on their neighbors, which I imagined added up to quite a lot of additional floor space. Is the city going through a boom period? I asked. A little bit, Cinder replied. Most of the empire is in a boom at the moment.
Truly? She nodded.
It's only been some 50 or so years since the continent was entirely brought to the grasp of the empire. You wouldn't think that from the way the emperor goes on about the empire being eternal and all-encompassing, Elder Frost said. But it's not wrong. There are, or were, several parts of the continent that were still either unexplored or considered entirely uninhabitable. Some are still the latter, but fewer now than before. Now the empire is pushing for a wider expansion.
Wider? I asked.
More children, bigger families, Cinder explained. A slow but steady cultural shift towards a more agrarian way of life for the majority, to support larger cities for the minority. You don't see it here as much in the far east of the empire.
I imagine because the location is less hospitable? She nodded.
Exactly. This is no longer the last frontier. There's nothing new to discover in the Flaming Steppes. We don't produce enough food to export much, nor do we have any other resource of great value. What we do have are poisons, a toxic environment, and lots of room.
Room might be worth much one day, the elder said. The elder said. The elder said.
I visited the West some 30 years ago. The far western sects are much stronger than we, but their lands are also much kinder. The citizens are larger and more open, and the sects can afford to pitch a wider net when recruiting from the talented and ambitious.
I hummed to myself. I'd have to ask the Limpet about it. I hummed to myself. I'd have to ask the Limpet about it. She was surprisingly well-traveled for someone her age. Do people travel a lot? I asked. Do they call the areas provinces or states?
Provinces, Cinder said. We don't have a local provincial government here, though some of the western provinces might. The central ones certainly do. As for travel, no, not really. Travel isn't expensive and time-consuming. Merchants travel, those with nothing but desperation in their bellies, and some few wandering cultivators will take on a dhow that'll have them explore the world. But most stay where they're from, with rare exceptions, Elder Frost said.
I see. I think that was often the same in my day. There were times when it changed, where a nation's people would become rich enough to travel, but most people lived and died within a day's walk of the same place, I said.
That's rather sad, Alex said. But I can understand it.
Why?
Rem asked.
It's stupid. You go where prey goes.
Alex shook their head. As a butler, your job should be to tend the master's domicile. A domicile rarely packs up at... As a butler, your job would be to tend the master's domicile. A domicile rarely packs up and moves. It's natural for a maid or butler to remain in one place their entire lives if that place is where their master needs them, isn't it? I wondered. I had a number of maids and butlers in my day. I warned them of my intentions before taking my rest, but I had left them in charge of some small estates and I warned them of my intentions before taking my rest, but I had left them in charge of some small estates and laboratories. Were they still there to this day? You'd think Wanderlust would kick in eventually, I said. Even I ventured out of the lab. At times. We reached the outer wall of the city, where the gate was opened for us, and then the time for chatter was reaching a middle, because it was time to get a move on. And then the time for chatter was reaching a middle. We reached the outer wall of the city, where the gate was opened for us, and then the time for chatter was reaching a middle, because it was time to get a move on. Because it was time to get a move on. And then the time for chatter was reaching a middle, because it was time to get a move on. And then the time for chatter was reaching a middle, because it was time to get a move on. Beauty. All right, just kind of tearing through here. And 12. All right. How's it going in the chat? How you guys holding up? Got a bunch of people watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is always great. It's an invigorating way to start my day. Just getting to chat with you guys and getting to get into this voice. Do. Oh. Boo boo doo doo boo boo doo boo doo. Jabba-doo-bum, blam, blam, bloom, blam. You know what I need to do today is to get outside, get some exercise. Really need to move my body because I am out of shape. Maybe I'll go for a run. I'll run after this. All right, I think I got time for one, maybe two more chapters, depending on how they go.
Chapter 14. Peculiar Path. So, I began as we kept up a respectable pace through the sparse woods near the city. What sort of wildlife should we expect around here? What sort of wildlife should we expect around here? Cinder was the one to answer. She was at the head of our little group, pathfinding through the woods while taking a zigzagging route. That mostly meant hopping from one flat-topped stone to another, each some 3 or 4 necrometers apart, and perhaps a necrometer above the ground. These rock formations were obviously unnatural. Stones didn't just rise out of the ground as stumpy little pillars at more or less even intervals so easily.
Interestingly, these seemed to be acting as a sort of road, with branches heading out to the sides and some stones visible deeper in the woods. They were relatively well hidden. I could only see 1 or 2 stones ahead at the time, with no straight path in sight. Instead, most of the stones were placed in such a way that the natural ebb and flow of the hilly landscape hid those further out from view, or they'd be hidden from the side by large, thorn-covered bushes or older trees. So close to Shiitake City, there's very, very, very little to worry about. The natural predators in this region are culled frequently. There are snails, as I believe I mentioned before, but they're relatively slow. I see. And further out? I asked. Further out, there are more dangerous animals to worry about. Ash wolves come to mind. They are large beasts, the same gray as the ash all around, and they can lie in wait for long hours only to jump out and attack. They fight in packs.
Rem remembers those,
Rem said.
They are large and bony. The meat they have is tasty. Lots of chi, but there's very little actual meat.
Bone doggies, Mem said. She sounded rather despondent. They're not very nice doggies. Bone doggies, I repeated. I presume that they're covered in bones, then? Or... I presume that they're covered in bones. Then? Are they perhaps undead? No, Cinder said with a dismissive wave of a sleeve-covered hand. The ash wolves are living creatures, though their nature is very, yin, as are most creatures from the ashen forest. That was a new term that I wasn't entirely familiar with. I made a mental note to explore that later. Are they the most dangerous predator in the woods? Are they the most dangerous predator in the woods? Cinder shook her head. No, that would be the mantises. Rem puffed up a little between one jump and the next.
We are the best hunters,
she said. I could actually believe her. Yes, Rem and Mem were both relatively weak, all things considered, but even the exceptionally impatient Rem was able to hold still for extended periods. And for all that I suspected her intelligence was a dump stat, she was still able to talk and for all that I suspected her intelligence was a dump stat, she was still able to talk, and with some learning, read and write. That placed her and her siblings above the common animal, being that intelligence made a predator an exceptional threat. It allowed for strategic and tactical thinking, the laying of traps and the outsmarting of foes. It meant that they could, if pushed, use tools to make the task of hunting their prey that much easier. There are other dangerous animals within the forest, Cinder said. One of the reasons we're traveling via these stepping stones is to avoid disturbing the ash. Some creatures linger beneath the surface and will jump up to assault you. That, and the ash can be deceptively deep in places. How deep? How deep? How deep? How deep? How deep? Alex asked. Cinder actually came to a full stop 3 stones later. It was a larger platform, more than wide enough to accommodate all of us, and jutting out of the side of a hill. She pointed down into the dip in the landscape. Below. How far do you think the ground is? She asked. Alex glanced over the edge. We were only perhaps half a necrometer away from the surface of the ash. It doesn't seem too deep. It, it doesn't seem so deep. It doesn't seem so deep. Cinder chuckled. Cinder chuckled. Cinder chuckled. There was a tree next to the stone. Cinder chuckled. There was a tree. Cinder chuckled. There was a tree next to the stone plateau we were on. There was a tree next to the stone plateau we were on. With an easy hop, she leapt up onto its branches, then stomped her foot down. The branch cracked, the sharp retort echoing across. The branch cracked, the sharp retort echoing out across the barren landscape before the entire branch came rushing down, dislodging ash from above as it went. Alex covered his mouth with a handkerchief as she backed away from the edge. The branch crashed down onto the ash and disappeared below. "We're on the edge of a gorge," Cinder said as she landed next to us once more. "It's deep, deep, deep." I leaned closer to the edge. The large branch had come to a stop some 3 necrometers deeper than I would have expected. Assuming that it had touched the ground below, which I wasn't. Assuming that it had touched the ground below, which wasn't a sure thing. Then there was something like 4 or 5 necrometers. Then there was something. Assuming that it had touched the ground below, which wasn't a sure thing, then there was something like 4 or 5 necrometers of ash here. That's astonishingly deep. That's astonishingly deep. That's astonishingly deep. That's astonishingly deep. Cinder chuckled, and I noticed Elder Frost giving me a look that I couldn't quite decipher. "Places like this are relatively common," Cinder said, "where the wind isn't strong or is blocked by the hills and trees, and where there's a dip for ash to settle. They're dangerous for those walking across the ashen forest, natural hidden pitfalls, but also places for monsters to lurk." She pointed just in time for the ash around the tree branch to shift. Something with a large, long mouth snapped. Something with a large, long mouth snapped its many teeth into the bark of the branch. Into the bark of the branch. It was shaken, and that shaking made more ash fly up into the air and unsettled the rest so that the whole was covered up. "What was that?" Mem asked. "Ashligator," Cinder said. I snorted. "Ashligator? Fantastic!" "They're not much of a threat, actually. Slow, territorial. They rarely venture out of the thickest ash. Dangerous, yes, but only for those that don't know where they're going. More than one curious visitor to these forests have lost a leg to them," Elder Frost said. "We should keep moving." I nodded along and followed as we hopped over to the next stone. These pillars, obviously they're not natural. "One of my ancestors," Cinder said with some pride. "My uncle," Elder Frost said. "He was a weak fighter, but a cunning and powerful cultivator all the same. He discovered some magical tricks that allowed him to turn ash to stone. He created a path for us from the edge of the forest to our sect. Then more, many more.
Leading to points of interests? I asked. Leading to points of interests? I asked. Cinder nodded.
Points of interest and paths that lead nowhere. We actually have outer disciples tasked with traveling across the forest via unused paths, just to ensure that they're still serviceable, and to leave tracks for others to follow.
We were leaving tracks ourselves. Cinder and Elder Frost and Alex were the only ones moving in such a way that they left no proof. Cinder, Elder Frost, and Alex were the only ones moving in such a way that they left no footprints. I was, of course, a wizard, not a rogue, so I had little care for stealth. Then again, Rem's and Mem's steps only left small points behind. So the shoe scuffs of my Oxfords were the most obvious markers we were leaving in our wake. I used a bit of prestidigitation on our next step to smooth out the ash behind us. It was a clever system, actually. These stones were safer, ostensibly, than walking on the ground, which meant that anyone with a lick of common sense would use these to travel. The stones could be used to mislead people and send them off in the wrong direction because they acted as roads. Someone traveling through the ashen forest would want to use these. But there was another layer to their use. They made the ground seem that much more dangerous, and the forest that much more threatening. It was a simple psychological trick, like providing a tiny sphere of light in the void of darkness, a promise of civility in a sea of danger. That could easily be turned against someone. Flick off the light, and suddenly the one depending on it would be caught unaware and unprepared. How hard would it be to tuck a few traps into these stone platforms? A few spells with delayed reactions, the caster hidden in the ash like one of those ashligators? We continued, keeping an even but quick pace for another couple of hours. Then the stones ran out. "From here on we walk," Cinder said as she hopped down. The ground puffed up with her step. "We'll be staying on the ridge of a hill. It means we'll be very visible, but the wind sweeps the ash away." Fair enough, I said as I stepped down as well. I imagine we'll reconnect with another similar set of stepping stones. Further out. Cinder blinked, then nodded. "Quite so. Just an hour's walk across the hills. The rest of the stepping stone paths from here lead to areas the forest of which are unsafe." Any other threats we should worry about? I asked. You don't breathe, so it's not an issue for you. But we'll be traversing a windy area with fine ash particulate in the air. They'll clog your lungs and leave you for dead if you're not equipped properly. Well, that's breathtakingly inconvenient. That's breathtakingly inconvenient, Alex said. "Well, that's breathtakingly inconvenient," Alex said. All right, there we go. And 13. All right, I think I'll squeeze one more chapter in, and then
we will call it the end of all of the cold reads. That would be part 3. So let me just take a sip of water here. And let's get into one more chapter. All right. A lot of people watching here. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of the community, wherever you're joining from, whether you're Facebook, whether you are YouTube as well. If you are just like swinging by and passing through, then if you're enjoying this, then like the video, subscribe, follow the SBTL group, all of that good stuff. Follow my Facebook page, all of that, and then you'll get updated, or you'll automatically see when I'm going to be going live. So, at least on YouTube. But if you want to join the inner fold, so to speak, then join our Discord. That is the place where, after narrating here on Cold Reads, I shift over to Discord and hang with everybody there. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So, come on by, come hang out if you want to follow along with the story and keep listening to the adventures of Harold and Co. Then that's the place to do it. All right. Let me just wipe my camera here. Hello. Okay. The final chapter.
Chapter 15. Brilliant Banners. I was quite glad for the existence of spells like prestidigitation. I was quite glad for the existence of spells like prestidigitation as we waded through calf-deep. I was quite glad for the existence of spells like prestidigitation as we waded through calf-deep ash. The two cultivators had techniques that allowed them to step onto the loose ash as though it were solid ground, but our mantis companions lacked any such abilities and were forced to push through the ash with some difficulty. I took some mild amount of pity on both Mem and Rem as they started to cough and sputter at the presence of so much ash. Cinder had been right when she warned that the ash could be dangerous to those that needed to breathe. A few simple healing spells cast so that they'd dispense their healing over the span of several hours rather than instantly helped to alleviate our insectoid companions' suffering. It also stopped Rem's grumbling. I wasn't entirely irate from her complaints, seeing as there was a good reason for them, but I would be lying to myself if I didn't admit that they were frustrating to hear. The path that Elder Frost charted eventually led us to a second set of stones that we could walk upon. I noticed that these had been brushed off and were much easier to find. They had tall banners next to them, with a symbol embroidered onto their surface. The banners were black and white, a diagonal stripe splitting the shades across the middle. In the center was a mountain, and from the top of it, a gray tree rose. "Is that the symbol of your sect?" I asked. There were two words written in the local pictograms: ash and forest. Ash and forest. Elder Frost chuckled. "It is. There was a strong fad some 3 decades ago. Every sect needed a banner with art and symbols to represent them. This is ours." "A fad," I repeated. I recall such things coming into vogue, then leaving. I recall some things coming in vogue, then leaving in time. Knightly houses would adopt a coat of arms, then the nobility would adopt a crest of their own. Businesses catering to them would commission complex signage, though smaller ones. Businesses catering to them would commission complex signage, then smaller ones would adopt their own. Businesses catering to them would commission complex signage, then smaller ones would adopt their own. So everyone would have a banner of their own? Cinder asked. Until every shop Until every shop and inn and street gang. Until every shop and inn and street gang has a crest of their own. Until every shop and inn and street gang has a crest of their own. Yes, I said. Then the nobility would start to think such things gauche and rather kitsch, and would simplify or drop their own heraldry, starting a new cycle.
How long do these cycles take? The elder asked. I recall such banners being popular in my youth, but that was a long time ago. Then they, as you said, became somewhat unfashionable.
I think the time for fashions to change depends on a number of factors, but the most important of these are the degrees to which people can afford to change their organizational appearance, which requires both the means to produce new appearances and the means to afford that production, and a certain degree of communication. Good ideas, if isolated, are lost. Cinder nodded along. The idea for banners came from the West. A few of us went there for a grand tournament where banners were seen, and so we created our own. More recently, I think the idea of such things has become less popular, though maybe not unpopular. That makes sense. The empire is rather wide, and communication standards are still quite slow. News seems to mostly circulate via criers, heralds, and letters. If the empire had better road infrastructure, or magical means of traveling, then news and new ideas would move far faster.
Is that something you wish to change?
One moment, you guys. I need a little air break.
All right. Where was I? Elder Frost asked. I considered it for the next few steps. I don't think so, but I might bring about such changes anyway, if your sect falls into line. If your sect falls in line, the limpet continues. If your sect falls in line, the limpet continues to grow, and we start to establish a foothold in the empire, then I see no reason why the regions under my control should stagnate. Poor communication bothers me, and it's not overtly complicated. Poor communication bothers me, and it's not overly complicated to rectify.
How would you do it? Cinder asked. I'm very, very, very curious.
The simple method is to employ undead birds to carry letters and light parcels. Use undead labor to rebuild and improve roads. In times of uncertainty or when banditry is still an issue, instituting a caravan system with undead guards can also improve material travel times.
Logical steps, but only available to those with the undead at their beck and call.
No, it's possible without. Merely more difficult. Magic makes for a fine replacement. Undead are generally weaker than golems and servitors made of metal and magic. Summons from other planes of reality can do most tasks in the same way,
though with questionable allegiances. Or you can do it all with well-trained, well-paid people. Yes, that is the least effective method by which to start, but I think that given time and space, technological and mechanical solutions can be found, or issues that you don't want to tackle via magical means. Technological and mechanical solutions. Technological and mechanical solutions can be found for issues. Technological and... Yes, that is the least effective method by which to start, but I think that given time and space, technological and mechanical solutions can be found for issues you don't want to tackle via magical means. Elder Frost glanced back at me. Why would you care so much for fixing things without magic when you seem to always have the magic for them? An interesting question. There were once large areas of the world where magic was weakened. A nation once created an entire field around themselves which disrupted magic, making the casting of weaker... A nation once created an entire field around themselves which disrupted magic, making the casting of weaker spells entirely impossible and complicating the casting of more powerful ones. That had been a space where spells below the second tier were almost impossible to cast, and those between the third and fourth were significantly more complex. At least for those spells which earned their tiers from complexity, as opposed to their level of danger. That region developed mechanical systems to overcome the hardships they imposed upon themselves. Long aqueducts for moving water, railed cars connecting cities together powered by steam engines. Without magic as a shortcut, but with time and resources to innovate, they found their own solutions. That is something I can respect. What happened to these people? Cinder asked. I politely removed their leadership. Their anti-magical stance was rooted in superstition and foolish beliefs. Their ancestors, those who'd actually created those very same systems, had done so because they couldn't control magic, and having things outside of their control was, to them, unforgivable. Once the fields faded, magic returned as a favorable option. Was magic better? Industrialization is powerful and creates great works, but it also does much harm. Magic is, in its own way, significantly cleaner. Just ask any druid about the consequences of an industrial revolution. Cinder frowned but nodded. I imagined that the young cultivator would ask the first druid she met, if she did meet one. Druidism seemed just close enough to cultivation as a vocation that I imagined there was a severe overlap in some places. That could make for an interesting point of study. Ooh, mama! We continued to chit-chat as we ambled along, hopping from stone to stone, each marked with a banner of the sect. I imagined that remaining hidden so close to the heart of the sect was a moot point. If someone had made it through the Ashen Forest to this point, then they'd make it to the sect no matter what. The banners also provided a clear marker of ownership over the location. ownership over the location. No one trespassing could pretend to be confused or lost when there were large signs flapping in the wind every dozen necrometers. "I can hear water." "I can hear water," Alex said. I glanced over to the maid and made note of very twitchy ears. "Not too far from here, Bone Daddy." "Not too far from here, Bone Daddy." "Not too far from here." "Not too far from here, Bone Daddy." "Not too far from here, Bone Daddy." "Not too far from here." "Not too far from here, Bone Daddy." "Not too far from here, Bone Daddy." "That's the lake," Cinder said. Cinder said, "We've arrived, and it's only early evening." "We'll have to see if the ship we requested is prepared," Elder Frost said. As it turned out, it was. We left the edges of the ashen forest, landing on a beach whose shores were covered in muddy ash covering countless small pebbles and larger boulders. The ashen lake was quite large, so much so that I couldn't see across it to the other side, though the tops of the mountains there were still clearly visible in the distance. A pier had been erected along the shoreline. It was made of stone, the same as the stepping stones we'd been using, though these were weathered by age and the tides. And left stained by ash and grime. A ship sat next to the docks. A single-masted vessel, quite long and sturdily built, and painted a dull gray with white sails. It was crewed by 3 figures, all in the garb of the Ashen Forest sect, and all of whom stopped at our arrival and quickly gathered on the pier. "Lord Harold, these are the members of the sect who will be bringing you across the lake," the elder said. "I believe it is their best interest to introduce themselves to you, as they will be attending you for the journey." The elder said, "I believe it is their best interest to introduce themselves to you, as they will be attending you for the journey." All right, there you have it. That's the end of... Chapter 10. Whoops. 11. And this is chapter 12. It's 13. 14. 15. There we go. And then we're on to chapter 16. There we go. All right, you guys. Well, it's been a good day. Got about an hour of finished audio done, and that always feels good. That is 1 hour closer to this book being done, and my goodness, is this one flying by. It's an absolute breeze to narrate this. And I'm having a blast. So thank you guys very much for hanging out today. This has been Cold Reads for Dead Tired 3. And if you haven't already, I know Rallo90 has, but if you haven't already checked out Dead Tired Book 1 on Audible, well, if you've enjoyed what you heard today, if you like the style, if you like the characters, go check it out. It's on Audible, and it's a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite series to be narrating, so I hope you enjoy it if you do. And that is it from me. I'm going to close up this stream, but thank you all once again, and I hope you have a fantastic, love-filled, joyful day. All right? You guys take care, and don't forget to check out the Discord for more streaming that isn't going to be recorded. All right? Bye-bye.